Hello, I'm Michelle Kotler, special education attorney, school administrator, teacher, program developer, educational evaluator, and now creator of the Parents Playbook for Special Education Success. I wanted to take a moment to share with you exactly why this course will transform your child's education, as well as your own state of mind. So if you go to Parents Playbook, you'll see after the little welcome video from me, what you'll learn, which is that how to conduct yourself every step of the way throughout this process, from your very first meeting with the school all the way through and including how to conduct a due process hearing without an attorney, if you decide to do so. You'll learn how to protect your savings and your sanity, how to advocate like a professional without spending tens of thousands of dollars, and how to stop wasting countless hours online trying to research and figure out for yourself the important information and what you need to do. This is a step-by-step roadmap, no experience required, no law degree required, no college degree required, no high school diploma required, in fact. You'll see some testimonial videos from very happy parents who've completed the Parents Playbook. Then you'll see this outline that explains each module to you. And this is where I'd like to spend a few minutes. So Module 1 is an overview of the IDEA to give you a general lay of the land with the background information that you need to know. And my goal is to get you from point A to point B in the shortest amount of time. So I don't go into a deep dive in each of these areas because you can find legal treatises written about each one. But you don't need to know all that. So I give you just what you need to know to be effective in the quickest way possible, because people don't have the time for all that and the bandwidth for it. So I give it to you in little bites that are digestible and understandable for all parents. Module 2. This module is really essential. What may be wrong and how to fix it. There are two conditions that unfortunately are a silent epidemic. 1 in 4 children has at least one of them. Until and unless these are identified by the correct specialist and remediated or fixed, and they are treatable, luckily, your child's going to continue to struggle and suffer forever, honestly. So we need to get to the bottom of what may really be going on with your child. And these conditions are often misdiagnosed as other things like dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD or ADD, anxiety, depression, autism, cognitive delay. The list goes on and on. So you need to, at a minimum, rule out both of these conditions to make sure they're not affecting your child. I will share with you that my own child has these, unfortunately, and I addressed one of them because I already knew about it. But the second one, I didn't see any signs of it. So she was very good at masking it. It wasn't until she was 20 years old that we figured out the second condition and what was really going on. And I took her to the correct specialist and she got treatment for it. Now she's a successful college student with accommodations and extra support, but she is successful. So it really requires a very high level of knowledge around these two conditions to be able to get your child the help that they need. No doctor, no psychologist, and no teacher is going to tell you about them because they don't know about them. That's the sad thing. So if no one tells you, you don't know where to go for help, how are you going to ever help your child? So Module 2 teaches you what these conditions are, where to go for help, how they could be misdiagnosed, how they are impacting your child's ability to learn, as well as the legal implications of the fact the school system missed these diagnoses because they do have a legal responsibility to find them. And when they do not, which is 99.9% of the time, then there is a legal implication of that misdiagnosis. And I teach you all of that in Module 2. And really, Module 2 is worth the price of admission all by itself because nowhere else are you going to be able to help your child get the assistance they actually need to be successful, other than the Parents Playbook for Special Education Success. Module 3 teaches you how to understand the eligibility process, including how to interpret the statistical information in the evaluation reports. I break it down in very easy to understand language, what those different types of scores mean, so that you can actually understand how your child is performing compared to peers of their same age. This is very important. You'll also learn how the eligibility process should be done, what the different disability classifications mean, how certain diagnoses that are more complex should be made, and so forth. And it's very important to get the eligibility decisions done correctly from the start. I'll give you a few examples why. I had one child who was in middle school. The school system had identified severe autism in their own school psychological evaluation 10 years before. But the team decided that they were not going to find him eligible as a child with autism. They were going to find him eligible as a child with a language impairment. And he was severely autistic to the extent that he could not participate in general education at all. So he was placed in a categorical classroom in elementary school, which is a self-contained classroom environment with a modified curriculum that was appropriate to meet his needs. And that was fine for him in elementary school. But in the same jurisdiction, once he went on to middle school, they no longer had those classrooms available. And now, because his IEP only said that he was language impaired, because they made the eligibility decision incorrectly 10 years before, he was dumped into a general education setting where all he could do all day, every day for 2 years was sit and watch YouTube videos and draw pictures. So he had zero education for 2 years. Zero. Because of the faulty eligibility decision that the school system made 10 years before. Another example, I had a young man who was a 17-year-old client, and I figured out that he was deaf. I suspected it. I took him to an audiologist myself, and the audiologist came out of the testing area and said to me, "How does he hear anything in school?" I said, "I don't know. That's why I brought him here." He had some CT scans done, I believe it was, and they determined that he had been deaf since birth. He was profoundly deaf in one ear and severely deaf in the other. But of course, the school system kept saying that he had ADHD because he seemed like he wasn't paying attention, because he kept saying, huh, what, what, what. Well, he kept saying that because he couldn't hear anything. And at the age of 17, he was reading on a first grade level because he couldn't hear sounds. So I went to a due process hearing for him, and we won, and we got hearing aids placed, as well as very intensive reading remedial training, which helped him substantially, but it didn't completely close a 17-year gap, as you can imagine. So this poor young man's life was just set off on the wrong path from day one, because nobody ever did the appropriate evaluation process and made the appropriate eligibility decision for him. But of course, they thought he had ADHD because that's what they think everybody has. And then the third example I'll give you quickly was a young man that I did an educational evaluation for privately. By the end of the evaluation, I was fairly certain that he had some type of seizure disorder. Of course, I'm not a doctor and I can't diagnose these things, but he was showing symptoms of a petit mal seizure disorder because he kept staring away. And it was like he would check out and then come back. He would kind of space out and then come back. So I encouraged the mother in a very diplomatic way to take him to a neurologist, which she did. And sure enough, he had a seizure disorder and required medicine. But what do you think the school system said he had? If you guessed ADHD, ding, 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 you're a winner. So schools today seem to think that every malady under the sun is ADHD. And I guarantee you it most certainly is not. So you've got to understand how to get the evaluations done correctly and the correct eligibility decision from the beginning, or your child's educational path is going to be totally messed up from day one. All right, enough about that. I'm sorry, after 30 years, I have so many stories I could go on forever. Module 4, Understanding the Individualized Education Program, or IEP process. It's very important for you to understand the components of the IEP and how they should be written. Don't just take the school's word for it, because I guarantee you they are not going to write certain sections of that IEP correctly. And what that means for your child is that if they're in the general education environment, which most kids are, they're going to be exposed to a very rigorous curriculum. It's going to be extremely difficult content, and the pace is going to move very fast. And if the IEP is not done thoroughly and properly, your child's going to get left behind. Then your child will be frustrated. And that's when we see them act out. They want to be removed from class. It's more cool to be seen as the bad kid than the dumb kid. And so then we see these behavioral patterns emerging because kids are frustrated and they can't keep up with the work, but they're embarrassed to ask for help because they don't want to get made fun of and bullied and all the rest of it. So if your child is experiencing these things or they refuse to go to school, they argue every morning about going to school, they're older and they're skipping school, or they're even threatening to drop out of school, it's because the work is too difficult. And the IEP, if they have one, is not written correctly, or if it is written correctly by some miracle, it's not being implemented. And Module 4 teaches you how to make sure that the IEP is being implemented. It also goes into more information about behavior. Module 5 teaches you about your rights as a parent, what you have to give consent for, and the surprising amount of things the school system can do for your child without your consent, which may shock you. Behavior and discipline, manifestation determinations, what they are, when you need them, how to ask for them. Confidentiality and access to records. Many advocates don't really know the laws around these issues either, so Module 5 goes into more detail there. Now, Module 6 starts getting into the dispute resolution. So let's say you're going to IEP meetings and you feel like your concerns are falling on deaf ears. It's very important for you to start from Module 1 and work your way through. Don't skip ahead because you need to have all the foundational information first. And you also need to get your child thoroughly evaluated under Module 2 to make sure you really know what's going on with your child. And once you've gotten through Modules 1 through 5 and you followed all the steps, now you're ready for Modules 6 and beyond. You'll learn about state-facilitated IEP meetings, which are available in some states, but not all. How to file state complaints. Unfortunately, federal complaints have gone away as advocacy mechanism because the federal government has basically eliminated that department. You'll learn how to request and conduct mediation, remedies that you can ask for. In other words, what can I even ask for the school system to do? A lot of people don't even know what they can ask for. So Module 6 teaches you about that. And then there's also something called the last bite at the apple. I give you one last trick that I've been able to use successfully to get my client what they needed without having to go to a due process hearing. Now, if all of those things fail, you try all of that, none of that works. Now we're really looking at the due process system because that's the last bastion that you have to try to get your child what they need. So beginning with Module 7, I teach you in detail about the due process complaint issues, including stay put, how to write a due process complaint correctly, which is very important, and also what happens after you file your complaint. Now let me come back to part 2. Once you file a due process complaint, which is your request for a hearing, it's very difficult to change it. So it's critically important that you get it right the first time. And the Parents Playbook goes into detail to teach you exactly how to do that. So you will learn from the beginning to the end what you need to include, how to structure it, what language to include, how to write it, how to organize everything, and so forth. So Module 7 is very, very important. Module 8, how to prepare for the due process hearing, how to get your documents ready, how to get your witnesses ready, how to handle the school's witnesses, and how to understand what the rules of evidence and civil procedure mean in the context of special education. Now, keep in mind, there are entire courses about evidence and civil procedure at law schools, right? They are a year long or semester long, but often 2 semesters of evidence and 2 semesters of civil procedure. So it's a very meaty subject, but I boil it down and I make it as accessible for parents as I possibly can. And you also have to remember that when it comes to special education, rules of evidence and civil procedure can vary from state to state. So I teach you that in the course as well. Module 9, Preparing for the hearing. How to write your opening statement. You will learn, and by the end of this module, you will actually have your own written opening statement. How to prepare your direct examination. So that means how to write the questions for your witnesses that you will call. How to prepare your cross. So how to write questions for the school system's witnesses. And how to write your closing argument, which, if done correctly, is a very powerful and persuasive way to help you tie your case together and get what you want. And then module 10 goes in depth as to actually how to conduct yourself at the due process hearing, how to get your evidence in, how to handle the witnesses, how to handle objections, how to deliver your closing, and very importantly is how to write post-hearing briefs. Because it's quite common for a hearing officer to stop the hearing or some point in the middle of the hearing or maybe at the end of the hearing to say, I want you to brief me on this issue. And there'll be some issue, some question of law that came up during the hearing, and the hearing officer is not an expert in it, and they want a legal brief written about it. Or the school system's attorney might say during the hearing, Mr. or Ms. Hearing Officer, can I brief you on this issue? And the hearing officer will grant it. And that means you need to reply, because if you don't reply, you're conceding the issue, and then you could very well lose the case. So you absolutely need to know how to write a post-hearing brief because that's outside of your control. You can also ask if you can brief an issue, and then the school system has to reply to it. And you may, in fact, want to do that. But even if you don't want to do that, it's quite common that you may be forced to do that. And so you need to know how to do so. All right. So this is a very formative course. There's nothing else like it. There's nowhere else that you're going to get the information in Module 2 about hidden disabilities. I've asked many advocates and attorneys over the years if they know about these hidden disabilities in Module 2, and they never do. So even if you hire an outside advocate or an expert or an attorney, you're still not going to get the information that you need to actually help your child improve. It's one thing to just give them a label and put a Band-Aid on it and try to somehow get them through the torture of school. But it's quite another thing to actually figure out what is the problem and can we fix it? Because if you can get to the heart of the problem and you can fix it, now you're transforming your child's life and yours along with theirs. So this is the Parents Playbook for Special Education Success. I go into a little bit about my background as well. 30 years in the business, licensed in Maryland as a lawyer. I've been a special education teacher in 4 jurisdictions, school administrator, advocate, 3 degrees, 2 in special education, my law degree. I've been featured on CBS News. I've been interviewed by other organizations like Bright Minds Processing and a podcast, It Could Be Your Eyes. And I also have my own YouTube channel. There are some really significant differences between completing this masterclass on your own versus hiring someone else or trying to figure this out on your own. With my masterclass, it's the only place where you will uncover hidden conditions that might be preventing your child from learning and learn how to get the help they need. You won't need to pay any expensive retainer fees, like easily a $5,000 retainer fee. You won't need to replenish the retainer fee. I know parents who've spent between $40,000 and one legal fees for due process hearings and lost anyway. So you do not need to put yourself in the poorhouse to do this. You don't need to waste countless hours on research. You can be sure the information is trustworthy. There are some pretty well-known special education advocates out there on YouTube and Facebook and so forth, and they give out wrong information. I used to actually correct a very well-known advocate on her Facebook page because she was pumping out wrong advice until it started to feel like it was a full-time job for me. And I said, okay, I need to stop doing this. I've talked with other advocates about this particular person, whom I won't name. And the other advocate volunteered initially before I said anything that third well-known person gives wrong information. So I'm not the only person saying it. And I'm telling you, you have to be very careful who you trust and what advice you follow. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There are well-meaning people who know some things, but they don't know as much as they think they know, but they seem very convincing. They're very polished. I know the production quality of my videos doesn't hold a candle to theirs. But what does hold a candle to them is my knowledge and my experience, because there's nobody else with my credentials out there. There's nobody else with a Bachelor of Science in Special Education and a Master of Education in Special Education and a law degree and 30 years of experience in this field. There just isn't, or at least I haven't found one yet. So take it from me. You need to make sure that you're going to an accurate source of information, and you'll be in control of the case and the remedies you seek. When you hire someone else, you lose all control over the case. They do not have the same level of background knowledge and content knowledge that I have in special education and these hidden disabilities. So there's just nothing else like it. Nothing else compares to it. And I highly, highly recommend, if your child is struggling in school, whether or not they already have an IEP, you just cannot trust that these things have been done correctly, because I've been on the inside of school systems, and I'm going to make an entire video series on my YouTube channel very shortly about all the ways the public schools are sticking it to your kids and not providing an appropriate educational program. So please be very, very careful. Once your child's educational time has gone by, you cannot get it back. So thanks for watching. Please take advantage of this incredible opportunity. It's the best investment you'll ever make. Transform your frustration into confidence today with the Parents Playbook for Special Education Success. Thanks for watching.